All right, and we're back. That's the way you do a break right there. We are going to continue on with our next speaker, who's the wonderful Dwight Andrews from Emory University. So let me introduce him. Dwight Andrews is a professor of music theory and African American music at Emory University, and is also the pastor of the First Congregational Church, UCC. He holds degrees from the University of Michigan, the Yale Divinity School, and a PhD in music theory from Yale University. Andrews has appeared on over 25 jazz and new music recordings and has been recognized for his collaborations with playwright August Wilson. He's served as musical director for the Broadway productions of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Joe Turner's Come and Gone, The Piano Lesson, and Seven Guitars. And he's working on a manuscript on the intersection between spirituality and jazz. His article and his talk today is titled Geri Allen's Sacred Works, More Than the Music. A big welcome to Dwight Andrews.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be with you this morning, albeit virtually in such a time as this, for such a time as this, to pay tribute and to celebrate the light and the legacy and the work of Geri Allen. I would like to begin with a few acknowledgments. First, I want to thank Michael Heller, Ellie Hassama, and Nicole Mitchell-Gant for spearheading this wonderful event, and to my fine friends at Columbia and at the University of Pittsburgh for sponsoring and supporting this event. I also want to acknowledge Anthony Kelly, Dan Fishman, and Michael Andrews for their technical assistance. A special thanks to my friend and brother from another mother, copyist Jordan Clausen, who Geri introduced me to many years ago and who helped me to create all of the examples for the essay itself. I met Geri Allen when she was just a young girl, really. And this seminar, this gathering for me is very, very powerful. Before I begin my formal reading, I want to thank all of the extraordinary members of the community of artists, writers, and thinkers, and the musicians who Geri managed to bring together over her lifetime, which was much too short. That extraordinary community was and will continue to be instrumental in expressing her equally extraordinary vision of music making, or what Vijay has told me, musicking and changing the world. Pianist composer Geri Allen left an indelible imprint on the world of music before she passed away too soon on June 27th, 2017. She was a formidable artist whose influence continues to resonate with other pianists, musicians, and composers. True to the jazz tradition, she developed an individual voice that was uniquely her own. Like other giants, her playing was immediately recognizable. In addition to her improvisational gifts, she was a talented composer and arranger, crafting original pieces as well as adding her own twist to works within the jazz canon. Her creative landscape, like her intellectual curiosity, was broad and wide. She read and listened intently and conversed and absorbed inputs from a wide array of people, texts, and traditions. All of these resources contributed to the musical personality of the Geri Allen we came to appreciate, admire, and love. The purpose of this presentation is to offer an overview of the essay I wrote for the Jazz Journal, the special issue on Geri Allen. The limitations of my presentation today preclude presenting any detailed analytic commentary, but I hope these remarks might serve as an invitation to all of you to read the essay, provide me with criticism, and perhaps take up the mantle of creating new scholarship and methods to examine the expansive world of creative and improvised music. In the published essay, I give a threefold purpose for writing it: to offer an exploration of Allen's compositional method and practice, to offer a comparative descriptive analysis of her two large-scale sacred works, For the Healing of the Nations, 2006, and Stone and Streams, 2013. And the third reason, and perhaps most important, to bring those works into the larger conversation about her creative output and legacy. It is my hope that this article will invite further investigation of her work and generate a deeper understanding of her compositional world within her overall output. This article is based in part on our long friendship and my experience with Geri as a side person, sometime pastor, conductor, and orchestrator. We first met when Geri was a teenager and student at Cass Tech in Detroit, and I was an undergraduate student at the University of Michigan School of Music. It was clear even then that she was an extraordinary spirit with big ears and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Our relationship continued until her death. I continue to feel a sense of connection to her spirit that transcends our mortal selves. Neither of us could have known how intertwined our lives and careers would become over the ensuing 40 plus years. I had the privilege to work as a side person on the performances of For the Healing of the Nations, and I served as orchestrator along with Jordan Clausen on Stone and Streams. Geri Allen, as all of you know, was a brilliant musician and devoted educator. She absorbed everything around her. She was a shining example of the remarkable and vibrant environment that was Detroit in the 1960s and 70s. She came from a long line of hometown pianists like Alice Coltrane, that is Alice McLeod, Tommy Flanagan, Sir Roland Hanna, Barry Harris, Hank Jones, Harold McKinney, and Terry Pollard. After graduating from Cass Tech, she completed her formal studies at Howard University and the University of Pittsburgh. But she maintained lifelong formative relationships with Marcus Belgraves and Nathan Davis. Her musical associations were broad and accomplished, which not only explains her expansive musical vocabulary, but also the rich diversity of her musical associations. At the time of her death, it was clear that Allen's body of work was impressive and well known. What is less well known are her large-scale sacred works. The reasons for this are manifold: too few performances, scant attention by the critical press, and the logistical challenges of assembling a specific set of improvising musicians that she wanted. All of these reasons contribute to the general lack of awareness about her sacred music. Also, as what was the case for her predecessors in this field, like Duke Ellington, Dave Brubeck, and Mary Lou Williams, the press, jazz and otherwise, seemed ill-suited to the task of critiquing her sacred jazz work. This is, of course, ironic, given that many musicians have long stated their understanding of jazz as a deeply spiritual expression and practice. But that discussion must be left for another time. This short essay and presentation today simply seeks to give you an overview of two of Allen's sacred compositions. It should come as no surprise that she would be interested in creating sacred music. In her own religious upbringing and respect for the church, it was never abated. Her exploration of Buddhism and Eastern philosophies also played a vital role. But perhaps the most powerful influence was her affinity for the life and work of composer pianist Mary Lou Williams. Williams was a devout Catholic in the 1950s and created sacred works specifically for use in the Catholic liturgy, including, of course, her Mary Lou's Mass, the Mass for Peace, and Black Christ of the Andes. Allen had a special connection for these works. She performed the Mass for Peace and Mary Lou's Mass on a number of occasions around the country. Her relationship with Williams' friend, advocate, and champion, Father Peter O'Brien, also made a lasting impression. In 2011, Allen wrote, Mary Lou Williams continues to have a great impact on my decision to make sacred music a focus in my life. She also acknowledged O'Brien's influence in his advocacy for Williams and her work. The connection between the two women is inescapable. When Allen came to New York on the jazz scene in 1982, less than a year after Mary Lou Williams' death, the comparisons between the two was almost immediate. Jazz critic George Kensler called Allen the most protean woman pianist to hit the jazz scene since Mary Lou Williams. There are many points of common ground between the two women. Both were exceptional pianists, composers, arrangers, and band leaders. Both had to wrestle with the challenges of being women in the male-dominated worlds of jazz and the music business. Both were devoted educators and mentors to younger musicians. Both were fiercely independent personalities with unique and singular music voices. And both Williams and Allen shared an intense interest in all things spiritual and created their own sacred or spiritual-based compositions. In addition to the sacred connection, both women shared a common connection through Zodiac Suite, which was just discussed earlier this morning. And Geri made a new recording entitled Zodiac Suite Revisited. It was the first full performance of the suite since Williams herself had performed it in the mid-1940s. This project represents yet another instance of Allen bringing a new twist to an existing work. Zodiac Suite Revisited is a testament to the integrity of Williams' original composition, which could bear the scrutiny of a bold reinterpretation. The recording provides a unique opportunity to experience a dialogue between two creative geniuses separated by several decades, but united in sound and in spirit. Although Geri Allen's artistic voice is quite distinct, summarizing the elements of her musical language is quite difficult, I think. Her many influences and interests combined with her mastery of her instrument make for the distinctive sound that we have come to recognize as Geri Allen's. Her eclecticism, however, does not prevent us from making a few preliminary observations about her compositional method and practice. Several characteristics are present in virtually all of her music. First, rhythm and musical time were the bedrock of her expression. Whether improvising or composing, she was ever aware of the time. To my ear, this is why the groove is always present in her playing, no matter what style. She swings in the best sense of the word in every setting. Second, her disposition toward using ostinati and ostinato techniques reflects her commitment to the groove. Allen's grooves were often asymmetrical, and she was drawn to time signatures like 5/4 and 7/8. Her use of ostinato prompts a useful observation about the technique's improvisational potential. Ostinati, like musical pedal points, are often thought of simply in terms of their repetitive or static nature. But on the contrary, it's precisely because of the stasis of an ostinato or pedal that the improviser is afforded more latitude to relate to the stasis. One need only to think of the expansive ostinato-based improvisations of John Coltrane in A Love Supreme or Spiritual, or his soaring performances on the pedal point approach to My Favorite Things. Third, like Duke Ellington, Allen's music was powerfully informed by her engagement with longtime collaborators. Just like Ellington might write for Cootie Williams or Barney Bigard, Allen created generous spaces for her compositions for longtime associates like Oliver Lake or Craig Harris. Both musicians are featured prominently in For the Healing of the Nations. Like Ellington, Allen knew what she could expect from her side people. Fourth, her harmonic and rhythmic language is best understood when taken as a unity. While it is certainly possible to separate and quantify aspects of harmony and rhythm, the more useful project is to consider the gestalt or the musical whole. Fifth and finally, Allen's music is often angular with unexpected twists and turns of phrase. The fully notated parts of her compositions maintain an improvisatory character, and there's an ever sense of discovery in her performance and in her composition. In the brief time that I have, I want to play a couple of very short examples to give you a sense of Geri Allen's composed music. Her piece, Stone and Streams, is one of the two sacred pieces that I am looking at in the larger article. They are very different, Stone and Streams, from For the Healing of the Nations. They are different both in concept and in character and dimension. What they do share, however, is Allen's language and musical voice. For the Healing of the Nations is organized around an ensemble of improvisers with a wide array of text. However, Stone and Streams centers around text based on Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech. And the whole piece is based on a single leitmotif, that of the African-American spiritual, O Freedom. Just as we heard Courtney dealing with Wade in the Water, Geri Allen had a great affinity for making sure that the tradition is constantly represented and rearticulated in the present. So for her to use a central song like Oh Freedom speaks volumes about her respect and regard for who we are and where we have come. I want to play just a short excerpt in my time remaining of the opening of this piece called Stone and Streams. The full essay goes into a detailed description, but what I want you to listen to in this first very short opening is the way in which Geri Allen as a composer integrates two really interesting interests of hers. The interpenetration between the octatonic collection, which many music theorists think about in terms of Stravinsky and others, and the saturation with diatonic and whole tone collections. If you listen to the very opening of this short excerpt, you'll get some sense of Geri's music and harmonic vocabulary. This is a rehearsal recording from the New Jersey Symphony just before the performance and the premiere of Stone and Streams. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Here we go. And here you can hear the theme, Oh Freedom, her harmonization. Here in this opening, you get a sense of the language that Geri is going to explore throughout the piece. And what she's going to do is to contrast these moments of the octatonic and the whole tone with this clearly diatonic material. Let's listen just a little bit more to a contrasting section going into the next segment. Example 2. Here is a clearly diatonic a diatonic setting in which she's going to then extrapolate and improvise with. It's coming up. Freedom, freedom, freedom. And just one more moment to get some sense of her use of color in the orchestra. And many of you can hear the influences of many different composers and repertoire in this music. Now, I'd like to go ahead only in the interest of time, and unfortunately, I can't do justice to this wonderful piece in my short time, but I'd like this to be a tease, and hopefully you will want to get a chance to both listen to it and read the analysis. The piece closes with an expansion of Geri's playing and improvising on "Oh Freedom," and then including the orchestra in a kind of long soli, unison soli, moving to a climax in which all of the themes of "Oh Freedom," one of her own original compositions called "Timeless Portraits and Dreams," all come together and to converge in the conclusion of this piece. Let's listen to the last 2 minutes. And you'll be able to hear the theme, "Oh Freedom," embedded in this. The final motive of Stone and Streams once again quotes Geri Allen's "Timeless Portraits and Dreams." In the work's closing moments, we hear the song set, but this time without words. The final sonority is an open fifth, and with this simple final sound, Allen reminds us of the simplicity and beauty of the unison, the octave, and the fifth. Perhaps she is signifying a more consonant and reconciled world. Geri's rich and textured musical language is the result of an equally rich gestation of musical, cultural, religious, and intellectual heritages. The comments presented here represent an attempt to embrace the multiplicity of influences, to encourage a hybrid analytic model that acknowledges that diversity, and to urge future conversations that will take jazz out of the margin and into the center of the conversation about 20th and 21st century music studies. By not doing so, we run the risk of complicity and intellectual dishonesty that has too long marred our scholarly efforts. The irony of completing this essay in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing epidemic of systemic violence on Black and Brown people around the globe makes the concepts of For the Healing of the Nations and Stone and Streams especially relevant. As the librettist Sandra Barnes writes, we are in need of a soulful healing. Her text, Painful Acknowledgement, speaks with prophetic clarity that reconciliation begins with an acknowledgement of the injury or the breach. Paradoxically, the sounding of the alarm for the healing of the nations is answered with the optimism of Stone and Streams and its encouragement to seek a bright tomorrow. Geri's sacred tones speak of reverence, beauty, and hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andrews. And we are going to keep moving to our next presenter. We're very happy to welcome Veronica Johnson. Veronica Johnson holds a master's degree in library and information science from Wayne State University. She's a board member for the Detroit Sound Conservancy, a grassroots music preservation organization. Johnson has done extensive archival research on Detroit jazz, including writing a history of the Greystone International Jazz Museum for the Michigan Historical Review. As an oral historian, her current project involves documenting the life stories of Detroit-born women jazz musicians through oral history interviews. The purpose of this project is to highlight the accomplishment of women from or based in Detroit who have significantly contributed to the city's jazz culture. Her talk today is titled Homegrown, Geri Allen's Detroit as a Gateway to Jazz. Please welcome Veronica Johnson.
Great. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you to Ellie Hisama, Columbia University, and the University of Pittsburgh for this amazing opportunity. I truly appreciate it. It's truly an honor to be part of such a prestigious event honoring the genius of musician Geri Allen. For my article in Jazz and Culture, I chose to do an oral history with Shahida Nurullah, who is a longtime colleague and friend of Geri Allen. As a Detroiter, I know the impact that Detroit musicians have had on jazz music. And knowing Geri's roots in the city, I wanted to capture the essence of who Geri was as an international artist and how her work is very much intertwined within Detroit's jazz history and culture. As a byproduct of Detroit's notable jazz history, Allen held a strong passion for the city and its cultural richness, and saw her work as a way to give back to the community that nourished her. Even after she left Detroit to explore more musical opportunities, she still stayed connected to the city through her teachings at the University of Michigan, where she served on the faculty for over 10 years and mentored tons of young musicians. She was also the artistic director of the Carr Center, which is a Detroit nonprofit focused on African-American culture and the arts. Throughout my oral history with the Nurullah, I wanted to show Geri's Detroit side and how much of an impact the city has had on her both personally and professionally. I wanted to just highlight a quote, from my oral history. It was a quote from an interview that Geri did with The Wire 67 in 1989. Allen said that she felt that Detroit's rich musical culture and heritage was, quote, sociologically mine, and that almost every single important contact and connection she has had in her musical career came from her Detroit upbringing. She also stated that there was a strong sense of tradition in Detroit's music, and, quote, I carried on that tradition in a traditional way in the sense that you learn from your elders. Just to give us some context on why I chose to do oral history with Detroit female jazz musician, I'm currently working on an oral history project where I'm documenting the life stories of Detroit women jazz musicians. And I would have loved the opportunity to have included Geri in my project. So I thought by doing an oral history with another Detroit female jazz artist who could discuss her relationship with Geri, this would further add to my goal of highlighting the accomplishments of women from or based in Detroit who have contributed to the city's jazz culture. Their stories merit a mainstream focus in the city's musical history and deserve equal attention to that of their male counterparts. I decided to interview Shahida because she and Geri were very close and they grew up together. They shared a deep bond that lasted up until Geri's death in 2017. To give some background on Shahida, she is a renowned jazz vocalist and educator who is part of a long legacy of Detroit jazz singers such as Sheila Jordan and Betty Carter. Nurullah's vocal talent has taken her around the world, allowing her to remain a force in this jazz industry for over 30 years. Her singing has been praised in Downbeat, the New York Times, and the Detroit Free Press. She has worked with a ton of Detroit jazz giants such as Donna Walden's Detroit Jazz Orchestra, Teddy Harris's Detroit Voices, and Ken Cox's Gorilla Jazz Band. In this annotated oral history, I explore Allen's career and legacy through the eyes and ears of her longtime friend and collaborator, Shahida Nurullah. In the interview, I covered topics such as their friendship beginning at Cass Technical High School, the group Allen started with Shahida and other Detroit artists called Open on All Sides, and their collaborative efforts throughout over the last 4 decades. We also touched on fond memories Shahida had with Geri and her thoughts on her as a musician and a Detroiter and why Detroit held such a special place in her heart. I'm going to just play a few clips from my interview with Shahida. My interview took place in October of 2019, and these are just a couple of clips from our conversation. So the first clip I'm going to play, Shahida's basically talking about her and Geri, how they had a really deep love for music. And she kind of talks about how they were kind of just, chill out and listen to music and the different types of music that they would listen to, which I would say definitely had an impact on Geri.
Later years, when we got together, we talked about our lives and personal things. We didn't necessarily talk about music all the time. There were things going on, and we just talked about what was going on in our lives. I mean, we talked about music, but we were really just catching up.
Right, just being like high school friends.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Totally makes sense. Did you guys listen to music together, or was
Well, we always listened to music. That's all that we did. I mean, when we were young, that's all that we did. I've been trying to. I took 2 students last evening to the music hall to see a flamenco show there. Okay. And one of them was asking me on the way back. I took them back to Windsor, and he was asking me, he said, well, he was asking me about the decision to do music, when did I make that decision? And was that always what I wanted to do? And I said, yeah. And that's all we did. All we did from the time we were very young was we always listened to music. I don't necessarily know if that's the case now, but that's what we did. Now, we did talk about the music and talk about what was out and who was doing what, So, yeah, we did listen to music. We listened to music, we'd just be in the car sitting and talking. I'd play stuff for her that I wanted her to hear, and, so we always listened to music.
Okay. Was it jazz, or was it just all genres?
It was all kinds of music,
genres.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was just a short clip of, again, Shahida talking about her and Geri's deep love for music and the different types of music that they listened to kind of growing up and then even into their later years. So the next clip I'm going to play really kind of talks about how Geri started the band, her Detroit band, Open on All Sides. She started the band in 1986, and it featured a number of amazing Detroit musicians, including bassist Jaribo Shahid, saxophonist David McMurray, and then also trumpeters Razy Biggs and Marcus Belgrave, and with Shahida on vocals. Their 1987 album, Open All Sides, in the middle, won praise for being both adventurous and compelling. And again, in this clip, Shahida talks about starting the band with Geri and her asking her to be a part of the group, and then also the touring that they did in Europe.
Maybe talk to me a little bit about when you decided to start Open on All Sides. I know she called you, said, "Hey, I'm starting this band." Maybe.
Yeah, I was very happy and honored to be asked to be a part of that band, and was excited about it. We had a great time. It was that music was hard, but we had a great time, and she's wanted to showcase people from Detroit. She was very proud of Detroit and being from here, being raised here, because she was born in Pontiac, but she was raised here, and a lot of pride about that. So that was great. That was just a great adventure.
Yeah,
because it was exciting.
Definitely an awesome band.
Yeah,
it was Razy Biggs and Jaribo Shaheed. And, was Marcus Belgrave?
Well, Marcus did the recording with us.
Okay.
Marcus did. Yeah, he played on one of the songs.
Okay.
He just came in and did it too. I remember that day. He just came in and she told him what she wanted, and he did it. And Lloyd Story, same thing. Lloyd was a tap dancer. He came in and did it. So.
Okay.
The touring band was different from the band that was on the record. There were some personnel changes.
Okay.
But most of us were from Detroit.
Okay.
Gerald Savage, I don't know where Gerald was from. I think Gerald was from Flint or something. I don't know.
He was on the recording and toured?
No, he did the tour.
Okay.
Robin Eubanks was the trombonist on the recording.
Okay.
And Steve Coleman was on the recording.
Okay, yep.
And Mino Sinelu. Sadiq was the percussionist with the touring group. And David, I sang the alto parts. She didn't replace the alto player. So, and Gerald took Robin's place.
Okay. Was this the first time you guys had worked together professionally, like in this group, or had you performed before?
Geri and I, we were. I have to believe that at some point we did something when we were young, but I know that we did a gig. I sang, and she played on the gig with Marcus Belgrave. We were opening for Jimmy Smith at Renaissance Live, and so that was fun.
Okay. Was this when you guys were in high school, or was this?
No, we were out of high school.
This was in the early '80s. Okay.
So due to time, I'm not going to play the entire clip. But again, that kind of just highlighted Geri and Shahida being in the group Open on All Sides, and just an incredible album. Definitely of interest, and just really kind of showcase the best of the Detroit jazz at its best. So again, I would definitely recommend checking that album out if you guys get a chance. So the next clip I'm going to play. Again, Shahida and I definitely got into kind of some more sentimental moments of just her relationship with Geri and the friendship that they shared, because they definitely had a relationship outside of music. So in this clip I'm going to play, Shahida talks about the last time that she saw Geri and kind of like just kind of what that was like.
So it was great.
We were talking. I didn't ask every specific question because I kind of went based off what you were saying. But we don't have to get into like when last time you saw her, because I didn't want you to get emotional or anything. I don't want you to have to redraw.
The last time I saw her was with when she was playing with Dee Dee Bridgewater at the music hall.
Oh, okay.
And I brought some of my students to Dee Dee's workshop. And that's actually the last time I saw her, was at that workshop, because I don't know, something strange happened down at the car center, and we didn't stay until she got there. And I really wish that I had now, because that I would have at least seen her again. But so she and Miss Bridgewater were talking about, what they were going to do. And I heard her mention Angel Eyes. And so I told one of my students, I said, go to the car and get there's a book in there, a book of music in the back of my passenger seat. Mm-hmm. In the sleeve, I said, go get that folder and bring it in here. And so, because I heard them talking about the key, and I knew that was the same key that I did it in. And so I said, go get that book. And so when he came back, I pulled the music out and I handed it to her. And she said, do you just drive around with music in the car? Mm-hmm. I said, actually, I do. I said, I leave this folder in the car. Mm-hmm. And I said, here, take this. I said, I heard her say the key. I said, I know this is the key you needed in. Mm-hmm. And she said, you don't need it back? I said, no, just keep it, Mm-hmm. And so she said, thank you. She said, that's just one less thing I have to do, Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm glad to give it to you, mm-hmm. So that was part of the last time that I saw her, mm-hmm. But she looked really good that day. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had no idea that, that was her passing was going to be that close mm-hmm. to that time, and I never thought that I wouldn't see her again.
Right? Yeah, you never know.
Yep. And she sounded really. That was the first time, because as you know, Geri had a her own style, mm-hmm. and it wasn't straight ahead.
Right.
So that was the first time that I had heard her play that way. Mm-hmm. With Dee Dee Bridgewater, and I certainly always knew that she had that capacity. I never mm-hmm. I didn't think that I never thought that she couldn't do that. I just had never heard that. I mean, we did, I heard her do some of the music that we did. I heard her do mostly the stuff that she wrote, mm-hmm. And then sometimes her take on tunes, mm-hmm. But nothing like what I heard with her, other than when we did that gig with.
In the interest of time, I'm going to play the entire clip. But again, just kind of setting up the framework for what I kind of go into more detail on in my oral history is, again, just Shahida, just her memories of Geri. And again, the last time seeing her was actually in Detroit at the Carr Center, where Geri was the artistic director at the time. So again, I just thought that was a really, again, just kind of an emotional moment that I just wanted to make sure that I included in their own history, because again, they shared a lot together, and that was, of course, definitely emotional, I'm sure, for Shahida to kind of bring back up those memories of having been the last time she's seen her. So the last clip I'm going to play is basically Shahida talking about just Geri as a person, her personal characteristics, how she remembered her. And then just she kind of discussed some of the accolades that she got. So I'm just going to kind of play that really quickly.
Jazz Power Award and mm-hmm. the Guggenheim thing, and she was nominated for an NAACP Image Award. Mm-hmm. But mostly what I remember, about her is that she was kind and gentle and quiet spoken. She was very focused. She was very passionate. She was fearless, yet she had a shy nature about her as well. She was beautiful, soulful, daring, protective, smart, really loved her children and family. And we laughed and we shared and we did music. Mm-hmm. Our love of music, and we did music, and she was a great human being. Mm-hmm. And just a masterful musician. I don't know what else to say.
Oh no, that's plenty.
Yeah,
You know, you definitely captured her, the essence of her.
Like I said, there were things that we shared that I can't talk about.
Oh yeah, I
but,
totally
you know,
understand. Because you guys are close friends. I totally understand. You don't have to mention any of that.
But I deeply and greatly respected her for the human being that she was and for the musician that she was. She was bad as hell.
Oh yeah, Geri
she was bad as hell. You know, so you can say that. I said she was bad as hell.
Put that in quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up here, again, just due to time, I definitely included a lot in the interview with Shahida, just about, you know, just her relationship with Geri, both personally and professionally. So I just hope that the article and the oral history just kind of reflects the bond that they shared, and hopefully readers will gain a better understanding of Geri's love for her hometown, because she definitely, you know, she really repped Detroit in everything she did. She made sure that, you know, people knew she was from Detroit, and how much of an impact, again, just the long legacy of Detroit musicians from, you know, Barry Harris, you know, just, you know, the list goes on and on, Marcus Belgrave. So she really incorporated that into her sound, into her music. And again, this oral history just kind of reflects the personal relationships that she developed in Detroit, Shahida being a big, you know, a big part of that. And then just how her music you know, influenced many. And a lot of times, you know, that goes back to her roots in the city. So again, I definitely appreciate this opportunity. And I hope that, again, that I'm definitely open to criticism and any suggestions. And I definitely hope that people just learn a little bit more about Detroit, Geri's Detroit side, and kind of how she was as a person. So thank you for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Veronica. And thank you to all of the panelists this morning for both your talks today and your contributions to the special issue. It's just been an unbelievable pleasure and a blessing to work with every one of you, and I can't wait for the issue to come out in December. Where we're gonna go next is to our response. And for anyone who saw the initial schedule that was posted for this event today, initially we were going to have a response by Professor Tammy Kernodle. And unfortunately, Dr. Kernodle had a conflict arise and was unable to be here today. So we're very, very happy to have instead the brilliant Dr. Sherry Tucker. And I'm going to introduce her in just a second. Before I do, I want to note that after Dr. Tucker's response, we're then going to go to a Q&A where all of the panelists will be visible and can speak back to questions in a more direct way. So if you have additional questions, or if you have questions for the panel as a whole, now would be a good time to get them in, and then we'll choose some to draw out during that discussion. Okay, so Sherry Tucker is a professor of American Studies at the University of Kansas. She's the author of Dance Floor Democracy, The Social Geography of Memory at the Hollywood Canteen, as well as Swing Shift, All-Girl Bands of the 1940s. And she's the co-editor with Nicole Rustin of Big Ears, Listening for Gender in Jazz Studies. Her articles on jazz and gender have appeared in many journals, including Black Music Research Journal, Critical Studies in Improvisation, Current Musicology, Jazz Perspectives, and Women in Music, as well as in numerous edited volumes. She is the co-editor of the journal American Studies, and she served as the Louis Armstrong Professor at the Center for Jazz Studies at Columbia University in 2004 and 2005. We're absolutely delighted to have her join us as a respondent today, so please welcome Sherry Tucker.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you, Ellie and Michael, for making it possible for us to spend this day together this way, this day. And I'm so happy to be here. It's truly an honor to respond to the special issue of Jazz and Culture, The Power of Geri Allen, where you will find the extended versions of the magnificent presentations that we've just witnessed this morning. I respond not with authority, but with awe. Just as listening to Geri Allen's music draws me away from speech, the experience of reading this deeply affecting special issue outstrips my ability to issue a standard set of comments. I am a responder undone. That's my most honest response. It's a cliche to call something a must read. So I'm flipping this into the imperative. If you're here today, if you love Geri Allen, read this issue, you must. But I have to warn you, you need to clear your calendar first. Surround yourself with comfortable pillows, cancel your meetings. When I received the advanced proofs of this issue, I was ecstatic. I was so excited. Even while I was downloading the PDFs, my heart was racing. And then I started reading with great energy and excitement, expecting to devour the entire issue in one sitting. But I couldn't. I was pulled in so deep by the prefaces by Farah Jasmine Griffin and Terry Lynn Carrington that I had to stop for a little while. I had to sit taking in Farah's statement that what would please Geri Allen about this issue was not be that it was about her, but that its occasion, quote, encouraged and inspired others to discover and express the depth, creativity, and complexity of their own ideas. Terry Lynn writes of Geri's depth as a friend, collaborator, and artist, and quote, unquote, low-key militant, who was at once, again, another quote, progressive and traditional, forthright and evasive, unquote. A deep well, Terry calls her. Terry admonishes us not to try to listen to Geri's music at the surface, but to heed the invitation to seek below the surface, since, another Terry Lynn Carrington quote, her assorted layers take time to unfold and moreover contribute to her magnetism and mystique. So this is probably the wrong place to make this admission, but I'm going to confess right now that there is some really excellent music in the world that I can thoroughly enjoy while, say, folding laundry. I need to say now that Geri Allen is not on that playlist. Listening to her music compels me to the present because my attention is drawn to what she's doing right that second. I'm puzzled in the most beautiful way. I can never predict where she's going, even if I've heard a recording many times. I'm transfixed. In this way, to listen to Geri Allen's music for me is kind of like breathing, I guess, and some kinds of meditation in which the breath is a reminder of the present, or I guess it is the present. Likewise, I could not read this issue in a surface or casual way. I found it impossible. I needed emotional space with time built in, not to run up and down the stairs doing my now famous laundry, but for reflection breaks. My body had to catch up to where the reading was taking me. So when I returned to the issue and read the introduction by her brother, Mount V. Allen III, I was fully absorbed, present, and gone. My body, well, I'm not even into the body of the issue, and I'm in so deep, absorbing stories of Geri as a sibling, daughter, friend, collaborator, as well as an artist, and how those interconnections felt to those close to her, how they understand those feelings, and how they integrate what lies beyond understanding. So thank you, contributors to this volume. Thank you so much for sharing so much. Each piece in this issue brings a new intimate perspective, a new mix of insights, the scholarly, artistic, spiritual, and personal entwined, with thematic cross currents streaming through the whole. Authorial and editorial references from one piece to another provide some guidance to some of those flows, but leaving space for readers to catch any number of intertextual waves, which I found very pleasurable in reading this. Some of those that spoke to me were the active verbs about seeking, mining, searching, finding, what appears in Yoko Suzuki's essay as searching for a new place, and how that wasn't just something she valued in her own writing and soloing, but something that she wanted for others. I loved Yoko's interview with Dwayne Dolphin, who talks about playing with Geri. She's the leader, but she tells him, Dwayne, go to a place. I will try to find you. I will find you. She's the leader, but she doesn't say, I'm going someplace. Follow me. As Yoko puts it, Geri wanted to create a space where the musicians were comfortable enough to partake in the exploratory process. The theme returns in Vijay Iyer's reflection that she would, this is a quote from Vijay, she would let her creative voice shine, but would leave no one behind, and harkens back to Mount Allen's memories of Geri's collaboration and encouragement to him to search for a new place, even when that meant helping her brother explore the places beyond practicing the piano. Another stream that carried me to new places is the search for new methods, new ways of writing about music, and new purposes for that activity. Vijay Iyer describes what he calls the odd experience of transcribing a remarkable solo, that standard analysis doesn't explain the effects of feeling guided. And he looks at not at how she plays the changes. Well, he does look at that, and he finds that, you know, it's odd because it doesn't get at it, or how she builds the solo, but turns to how she expressed time. And Vijay finds meaningful modes of analysis that illuminate how, quote, those ephemeral lines first appearing as spontaneous drops into the abyss that illuminate turn out to be structural moves executed with care, determination, and foresight. This honoring of her musical knowledge was very beautiful to me. And also, I find this in the array of methods that Dwight Andrews hybridizes to address Geri's embrace of a multiplicity of influences. One of the most exciting features of this special issue is the variety of forms it takes, from reminiscences, research articles, Veronica Johnson's beautiful interview with Shahida Nurullah, Geri's classmate from Cass Tech, fellow musician and lifelong friend, Fred Moten's poems, and Geri Allen's master's thesis on Eric Dolphy. It is not on ProQuest, and it is so good. Michael Heller's introduction is a thorough finding aid, situating the thesis in relation to Geri's life, career as a musician and scholar, and in relation to what was going on at the time in the fields of ethnomusicology, jazz studies, and intimations toward the emergent field of critical improvisation studies. As Michael writes, Allen's writing doesn't romanticize the past, but takes a communal claim to an ongoing present, reachable only through continuous engagement with musical innovation as a living force. Quote, this continuous engagement with the past and the present, tradition and innovation, searching for a new place as part of the tradition, is another theme that flows throughout the volume. And it's very exciting to see in Geri's own writing about another creative artist, Eric Dolphy. Heller helps us to see how her interest in Dolphy makes sense. They shared values for innovation. This is, I'm quoting Michael Heller, that extends the long tradition of Black music making. We also see this in Ellie Hassama's piece, where she talks about Geri and working with Courtney Bryan on that piece that we got to see and hear recently, and also Shahida Nurullah's characterization of Geri Allen as proto-traditional. Allen followed Dolphy's music, and here I just want to say one thing about the thesis. She follows Dolphy's music across genres and circles, avant-garde jazz and new music, and addresses the conditions of saying something new under conditions of massive criticism, something that she also, I think, knew something about. Her openness is seen to me in also in her treatment of Dolphy's keen interest in playing with birds and how he produced sounds on his different instruments. Different techniques were needed to get at the species of birds on his different instruments. Playing with birds in this MA thesis is not simply an example of personal idiosyncrasy, oh, this is an interesting biographical detail, but treated alongside other explorations of this important creative improviser. I feel that her treatment of the birds pre-shadows a way of writing about human, non-human animal co-creation that I found very moving. Allen doesn't make a big deal out of treating the birds as co-creators, but addresses these interspecies improvisations as she addresses other aspects of Dolphy's training and development as an improviser. Improvising with birds leads Dolphy to mine the advanced tools of his technical virtuosity on his instruments, so he could find ways of playing with the birds, not imitate them. She doesn't call attention to this, but I was delighted to read of Dolphy's improvising with the birds because he likes what they are doing on their instruments. I would not be able to resist some kind of sentence that expresses that delight, but Geri doesn't. She treats this exploration with utmost respect and a steady hand, and I loved it. If finding words for this response was not daunting enough already, I am, as you know, sitting in for the one and only Tammy Kernodle, and I share your disappointment. Tammy could not be here today, and she would have had wonderful words to say. So I took the liberty of Zoom interviewing her, and with her permission, I would like to do this very meta thing now of replaying Zoom on Zoom. And so here I go into this awkward screen sharing moment. Let's see, here we go. This is the place, Fiji, where no one feels guided. Okay, share. Share computer sound. Okay.
And her engagement with music was always about seemingly like it was about stretching her to go beyond, you know, because she could have done what we see many musicians do, and that is perfect a certain sound, you know, in different musical settings and just be comfortable there, right? Or you can, and her engagement with music was always about seemingly like it was about stretching her to go beyond, you know, because she could have done what we see many musicians do, and that is perfect a certain sound, you know.
Share
Geri,
your
we
mic.
don't hear you.
I'm so sorry. I think, okay, am I still screen sharing? I am. I don't want to be, so I'm not screen sharing. Okay,
You're not screen sharing.
I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm so sorry, but you got to see Tammy for a second. And we talked, Tammy and I talked for about 90 minutes. So clearly I can't play the whole thing, but I wanted to play a little more than that. But she talks about several things. One, she talks about sitting in rooms with Geri Allen, and she's talking about what a deep listener she was. And she said, you know, that sometimes she would be sitting in a room with her and she'd be in awe of being in the presence of the great Geri Allen. And then Geri would be so quiet that she said you could almost forget she was there. And I also had that experience. And it was something that made that Tammy expressed sadness about, and she said that there were questions she would have liked to have asked her, and so I said, what are those questions? And Tammy had a number of questions. One was, what did she feel she got out of ethno? She wanted to know that. She wanted to know. Oh my goodness, there was so many, what it was like to be immersed in Mary Lou Williams, something that Tammy Kernodle knows something about. I can share the full video with people later if they'd like to see what Tammy said. I'm disappointed I wasn't able to play that for you. Oh, I have, she talked about how how she felt that people didn't understand Geri's immersion into the music, but that she felt that Geri understood that. And she talked about how she was always, her openness to stretching and gaining knowledge at every level. And she wanted to know too about, she would have asked Geri Allen about her struggles in the academy. What was it like for her to be an artist in the academy, a functioning artist? And she talks about, because Geri wasn't at conservatories where that is more common. She was at places that were not conservatories. So how did people react to her from her point of view? And she'd want to know about how she navigated the academy, how she navigated those spaces. And then Tammy turned to me in Zoom and said, what would you ask her? And I wasn't even going to try to play that part, because I went on for so long trying to find words for a question that was deeply felt for me, but that I couldn't say. But I said that I think I finally got to saying that I would want to know what it was like for her to go to that place. And we talked about photographs of Geri Allen, and Tammy pointed out some photographs where she's really in a place, and what is that place? I would want to know what it's like to go to that place, to be in that place that I hear when I listen to her. What was it like for her? What does it feel like to be in the place? Was it ever found? Is the place always a layer away? I was very touched by Tammy's memories of Geri. So quiet, you could almost forget she was there. And I thought about, it made me remember sitting in her presence and listening to her listening. Tammy and I searched for Geri Allen for about 90 minutes on that Zoom call. And the next time I read the issue, I'm certain I'm going to hear something new. Whatever Geri's answers might have been about the places that she plays that transfixes me to the moment, what I hear is the invitation to venture beyond the surface of things, to mine the possibilities of the present, a technique of navigating spaces, and a mode of honoring and expressing the time we have. So everybody must read the special issue, subscribe to Jazz and Culture. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sherry. It's so wonderful to have your thoughts and to have your reading on the issue. Yeah, wonderful to have you here today. I wish that the audience could see too, there's a chat window among the panelists where the different speakers today are encouraging and praising each other. So it's just a beautiful morning altogether. But what we want to do is take it into the realm of question and answer. I think we're going to bring all of the panelists on screen is the plan, if everyone could turn on your videos. And again, if you have questions to get out for the whole group, we can do it here. And I thought maybe I'd start, there's so many great questions. A lot of them were specific to particular moments in the talk. I thought maybe a place to start would be, there was a question during Yoko Suzuki's talk about collective making and Geri's connection to collective making and creating space for others as well. And I thought maybe we'd start here. I think that the question should be visible to the audience now if this is working the way it should, but I'll read it from Moses Serubiri, who wrote, Dr. Suzuki, would you say that this collective making strategy is also part of what was named by Terry Lynn Carrington as a female-centered strategy? At the Harvard Symposium, and that's reference to the wonderful symposium, Timeless Portraits and Dreams from last year, at the Harvard Symposium, both Spalding emphasized the idea of giving space to others as part of Alan's key contributions. I think that's something we could take in a lot of different directions. So I'll open it to Yoko or open it to the whole floor for anyone who wants to speak about Geri's work in this regard.
I mean, I never actually thought about this female-centered strategy, but definitely Geri was somebody who would create space for everybody. So Yeah, so I mean, I think we can say that. But as probably, everybody who knew her knew that she never actually really explicitly said anything about like being like for women or like making it like political or feminism, like, but without saying it, she did so much for women. I think that was something that's really she yeah, she didn't really like advertise as feminism or anything, but she was yeah, she did so much for women, for women to be able to participate. So I don't know if I could answer it.
Would anyone else like to chime in? Yeah, Ellie.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate that thought of giving space to others, because it's really a beautiful one. And I think it's something we've done with this symposium. First, working with you, Michael, has been extraordinary. We must have emailed each other like 500 times in the past weeks. But it's really been fruitful, I think, to have this be a collaborative effort. And I hope there are many more involving other institutions as well. And I also wanted to thank Yoko, who put together a panel which met at Feminist Theory and Music last year at Berklee College of Music. And Yoko had this idea, Vijay gave a paper, Courtney Bryan also wrote a text. So part of the special issue came out of Yoko's efforts. And then I saw one of the questions was from Frank at Pittsburgh. How did we feel when this special issue was announced? So I thought it was tremendously exciting. And as a former journal editor, can't think of a time when you've really seen that, like focusing on one person. It's just so one woman person is so rare. And I think it was perfect for Geri's connections to the roots of this journal and honoring her in 2020. So there's something about the making space for others, collaboration, making it multi-institutional, which we'll talk about in the telematics roundtable this afternoon, which for me is something deeply meaningful. And it's something I think very much in her spirit.
Thank you. Maybe we could also bring in, we got a couple of questions for Dr. Andrews during his talk about the role of spirituality in Geri's life and your connection to that in particular. Maybe I'll post this one from Ian Straker, who wrote, Dr. Andrews mentioned that he at times played the role of pastor to Geri. Does he have any reflections on how Geri's personal faith impacted her music in general and her religious pieces in particular?
Yeah, that's actually not as easy to answer as you might think, because I found her surprisingly rigorous in her seeking, and I don't mean that in a religious sense, in her seeking in a spiritual sense. And at the very same time, she was aggressively digging into scriptures and always curious about one of these miracles that happened in the Bible, and did it really happen? And, how do I interpret it? And we'd have these wonderfully long conversations. So I think what I was always struck with is the way in which she was so grounded in a sense of a spiritual transcendent reality that she was constantly living into, and sometimes found herself in conflict with kind of religious dogma. And so we oftentimes spoke about issues of, well, is this what it really means? And so I think she was in some ways more a pastor to me than I was to her, because I think she was so profoundly honest in her seeking that one could not hide behind one's religiosity. And so it kind of, it made you be the truth. And in that sense, I think we had a reciprocal kind of relationship about pastoring. But there's no question, though, that in spite of her going to Bible studies and being a very active member of a church with Dr. Howard in New Jersey, she always had a very, very broad kind of purview of what she was interested in understanding. And that's why she was always looking at other spiritual traditions and disciplines. And I found her an incredibly spiritual person. It's probably not the best answer, but her personality resists kind of a simple kind of yes.
Right. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Maybe I'll go next to a pair of questions that were posed for Vijay. I don't know if I can post more than one question at a time. Let's see what happens if I do this and this. Did two questions just appear for anyone? I don't know. I'll read them out loud. So one was for Vijay Iyer. How might you locate Geri Allen and her ideas in improvised music within Black modernities? The questions you pose evoke for me the act of writing, but also inscribing an alterity. And then the second question was, I was hoping to ask Professor Iyer to elaborate a bit more about the relationship or lack thereof between hierarchical arrangement and musicality or musicking. Specifically, can you please elaborate about hierarchical conceptions of music and musical form? Any direction you want to take all of that in?
Oh, those are easy questions. Thank you both for those. As far as modernity, part of the question is who gets to participate in modernity? Who gets to be named as modern? One of the reasons that I introduced the term speculative in trying to think through and listen carefully to what Geri Allen was doing is that I think we have a way of talking about musicians in terms of their pasts. We've been doing it sort of all day, actually. And that was very important, clearly, as we all know, to Geri Allen, a sense of connection to the past. And that maybe could be understood as a kind of spirituality, maybe. Reverend Andrews is nodding, so I'll take that as I'm not wrong yet. But particularly, like, what does modernity mean in the context of Black life? I think Fred Moten, who I've quoted a couple times, said something about how, often in like American letters, Black and avant-garde are configured as opposites. So what does it mean for us to assert that Geri Allen had her own imagination, that she played some unprecedented things, that she invented? Where did those inventions come from? Yes, she studied widely. She was deeply grounded in, yes, the legacy of Detroit pianists, Detroit music. She studied Andrew Hill's music, Eric Dolphy, as we know, Herbie Nichols, very much into Thelonious Monk, and you can hear all of that speaking through her. McCoy Tyner was another point of reference for her. And yet you can say that much of what she did can be attributed to none of those people, right? And so how do we talk about that stuff that comes from apparently none of it, So this is kind of why I'm trying to introduce a way of talking about the Black radical imagination. And to this term, I've been doing a course centered on, I was gonna say 6, but it's 7, 7 great Black women composer pianists of the 20th and 21st century, the 7th being Courtney Bryan, but the 6th is Geri Allen. We've been spending this week and next week on her music, and it's been revelatory to do that kind of deep dive with the students, and to watch them light up, watch them hear something new for the first time, something that they didn't know was possible. And so I think that kind of defiant imagination, what did Terry Lynn Carrington, what her phrase was, low-key militant. And so like that is like, there's something, it's more than mere modernism, but something more like explosive. There's this explosive quality in the imagination that I want to be able to try to talk about. The second question was about hierarchical forms, and maybe someone else can do this more justice, but I guess I was thinking about like the ring shout, for example, as a sort of touchstone formal principle, we could say, the sort of ritual quality, which is, Reverend Andrews was talking about these ostinati that appear, that are omnipresent in her music, and what is that doing, and what does that do as a formal element? It kind of breaks music into modules, right? And that each module can be used as some kind of vehicle for some elevatory procedure. I don't know if that's a word. Sorry, ASL person. Thank you for your efforts. But some kind of way of elevating us, carrying us somewhere new, and then we begin again with the next episode, the next module. So form emerges through this collection of episodes rather than through some like overarching sense of what's supposed to happen. And that's what you find in a lot of your music, that it's it sort of like uses these different modules or spaces as a way to explore and create in real time. And that's something that is also part of the tradition. I hope that starts to answer some of that. Thank you for those questions.
Thank you, Vijay. Next, I thought this is one that many people on the panel might be able to speak to. Gargi Shinde writes in, I was hoping the panel could speak to Geri Allen's and another great Detroit artist, Alice Coltrane's, spiritual, rather transcendental aesthetic spaces as connected to Black feminist spaces. Thoughts from anyone on the panel connecting that?
I can't speak to the Black feminist part of the question. I just don't have a sense and an understanding to address that part of it. But I do think that part of the culture of Detroit, just because of the nature of Detroit, had a tremendously open on all sides understanding of a lot of different things. So for example, if you think about, another person who spent a lot of time in Detroit, Yusuf Lateef, I mean, the way in which his spiritual world was much bigger than the geography of the city that he, matured in and lived in for a part of his life. And I think that that was actually quite common. So for many people who are seeking, I find and have found Detroit to be an incredibly enlivening place because you were bumping up against all of these other traditions at once. The great tragedy, to my way of thinking, is that Detroit was, in my experience, an incredible laboratory to grow up in, because you had all of these worlds of sounds, all of this food, all of these different traditions, all meshed in this mushing up against one another at once. And that was the Detroit that I knew. And that's a part of what made it such a rich experience. I mean, I think Mark Slobin's book about Detroit really does hit the ways in which our sense of identities is much too small, and our sense of locality is much too small. And the reason why we have an Alice or a Geri or a Yusuf or so many others is because the world that they live and breathe in is much bigger than the little definitions and identities we want to restrict them to. And that's one of the reasons why I really need to grow in my understanding, for example, of Black feminism, so I can get a deeper grounding in that particular identity, because I'm struggling with identities these days. So bear with me as you teach me the way forward, all.
Thank you, Dwight. I wondered actually too if Veronica had any thoughts on this in connection to your larger project surrounding Black musicians, Black female musicians from Detroit. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was actually gonna chime in there. Just in regards to what Dwight was saying, just how much of an impact Detroit has had as a whole on jazz. So you think about Yusef Lateef, Barry Harris, Marcus Belgrave. There's such a wealth of Detroit greatness that has come out of the city. And in regards to Alice Coltrane and Jerry Allen, they were just one of many Detroit female jazz musicians. Actually, someone in the comments mentioned Terry Jean Pollard, who was definitely a incredible jazz pianist, vibraphonist. She definitely elevated the standard of Detroit jazz piano. So I think that she's definitely underrated when it comes to Black feminism. A lot of times as Black females, they not only have to kind of navigate being a female, but also being African American. So I think it just definitely makes it probably harder to kind of, get into that space of the larger, jazz, jazz hybrid and all that. So, I think that there's definitely a lot more, Detroit females in jazz that I want to highlight through my project, which is hence why I'm doing it, because I think they're definitely, a lot more underrated than some of the Detroit male musicians in terms of, getting the credit that they deserve. So I think like Black feminism has a lot to do with, while maybe a lot of Detroit Black female jazz musicians haven't been as largely within the mainstream as they probably deserve. That's just again my personal thoughts about it.
Thank you. And I think we have time for about one more. There's so many great questions. Thank you all for posting it. Well, this is a somewhat specific one, but I think an interesting one from Larry Blumenfeld, who thanks us for the panel. And then at the end, and I'm especially interested if Yoko has thoughts on this, because I know you've interviewed members of this band. But I wonder if anyone can speak from direct communication with Geri about her decision to have a tap dancer, that would be Maurice Chestnut, in her band, and her process of integrating that into the ensemble. Anyone have any thoughts?
I'll just say one quick thing. I can't speak specifically about that band, but on the album Open on All Sides in the middle, there's a piece that features a tap dancer. So it was on her mind for a long time. This is dating back more than 30 years. And so, I think that person, this is like, now there's no visual component, right? It's on a record. So I think she was interested in the rhythmic and sonic offerings of that practice, and also relating it to what she was doing rhythmically, to her rhythmic language and her rhythmic dexterity and acuity.
Yeah, and then also, I think I remember she was saying somewhere that she wanted to re-emphasize the connection between music and dance, because they were always connected. And so yeah, her earlier work had a tap dancer too. And then also, I think I'm correct on this, that I think Mount said that she actually tap danced when she was younger. And then also her child, one of her daughters, Layla, also took tap lessons from Maurice Chestnut. Actually, that's how she became got to know Maurice Chestnut. So yeah.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That's pretty much brings us to being out of time, and so we're gonna cut things off there. But thank you all. I mean, this has just been an unbelievably fabulous panel, and as I said, it's just been a pleasure to work with everyone throughout the process of putting this issue together. Let's see, Mount Allen just weighed in. Correct, she did tap dance. So this is the benefit of having everyone arrive for the same conference. Thank you, Mount, for confirming that.
Definitely did not know that.
So what happens next is that we're going to take a half-hour break. This is sort of the lunch break within the day for the symposium. During that break, we are going to play another video, and this time the video is going to be from a 2015 performance entitled Spooky Interaction. And this is a telematic performance that was coordinated as part of a George Lewis residency at the University of Pittsburgh. The participants are Jerry Allen, George Lewis, Nicole Mitchell-Gant, Michael Desson, and Francis Wong. And then after we play this, we'll be able to play most of the performance if people want to keep it on as you eat lunch or take care of other things. And then coming out of that, we'll have a panel discussion with all of those people who were participating in this telematic performance, along with Jerry's brother, Mount Allen III, who's a specialist in music technology and was integral to that as well, and moderated by my colleague, Aaron J. Johnson. So we'll get that going. Thank you again, everyone, for a fantastic morning, and we'll see you all back in a half hour.